family, and welcome to this episode of Legacy Chat. My name is Rick, and I'm an alcoholic. I was given the gift of sobriety on November 17th, 1987, and it's my privilege to be your host for this episode. Legacy Chat is a podcast made by and for members of AA to share their experience, strength, and hope on all three of our legacies in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a service of takethe12.org. That's takethe12.org, a three-legacy study website. All episodes of this podcast will be available to listen to or download completely free on takethe12.org. The primary purpose of our time together is to create a discussion space of our three legacies so our listeners might be able to have a richer and more personal experience of AA's 12 steps, 12 traditions, and 12 concepts for world service. Legacy Chat is not affiliated with Alcoholics Anonymous, and neither myself nor any of my guests in this podcast speak for AA as a whole. We're only here today to share our own unique experience on one of AA's three legacies. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about step 12 and our first legacy of recovery. And I am just incredibly honored to have our guest with us today. He has played a vital role in my life for the last almost 7 years now, almost 7 years. And it's just been a joy to be able to walk this journey of recovery with him. So his name is Terry C. Terry, please introduce yourself and tell our listeners where you're from, your home group, your sobriety date, and just a little bit about how you got to AA.
Thank you, Rick. My name is Terry C., and I'm an alcoholic, and I've been sober since July 22nd of 1991. My home group is the Get in the Car group in Grapevine, Texas. And how I got into AA was by accident. Actually, I got through a hospital, and I didn't go into that hospital because I wanted to get sober and clean. I went to the hospital because I wanted the heat off and trying to save a job. I wasn't really trying to save anything else, although relationships with family and real friends had long since gone away. But I really I needed to save my job. And so place I worked at that time at EAP program, and I knew the word on the street was if you go down there, you get 30 days and you come back and you can give you a second, third, fourth, fifth chance at that time. But so I went into treatment with really just a pure motivation of saving my job. But somewhere in those 30 days, around a bunch of people that were being honest about themselves, that was key for me. I heard some things that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And it really made me my first adult experience of starting to really look at myself in a way to try to do something different. It's not to say that I didn't have prior to that ever go through anything where I wanted to not drink or tried to stop drinking. I had had troubles with the law, DWIs, and each one of those I made efforts. I made efforts to try to stop drinking. And this was my first exposure of getting help from other people to stop drinking. So I got out of that treatment center and I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous with the idea that I just give it a chance. We'll see what happens. I had known for a long time that something needed to change. I just didn't know what or how to make that happen. And because of that experience, I was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And from then into this day, I now know what needs to happen in order for me to make those changes in my life. Not only that I don't drink and the heat stays off, because that's the thing that I came here for happened. The heat's off. I ain't paid lawyers. I don't go to divorce course. All that stuff. I have jobs. I keep jobs. I go to work. The things that I really needed to change that I came probably with the wrong motivation actually did happen. But on top of that, I have found a way to live comfortably in my own skin amongst you and my fellows. And what a gift that's been. And I found something I didn't even know I was looking for.
I love that. Thank you so very much. And you know, it's funny, I can totally relate to and identify with the idea that I didn't come here with all the right motives. I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous with the right motives. I came for a whole different set of reasons. And how grateful are we both that we have learned the real reason that we're
Absolutely.
here, right? I love it. Okay, so
Absolutely.
let's get started. I always like to start off with a reading from the forward of the 12 and 12 when we're talking about the steps, because I want my dear friend and your wife Shannon really turned me on to this important paragraph in the forward of the 12 and 12, and I think it sums up our 12 steps more perfectly than anywhere else that Bill wrote about them. And he said this: A's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. I've always believed, and this is just my personal opinion and or my personal experience, which I do believe there's a difference between opinion and experience, but my personal experience is that for me, for this alcoholic, I've always needed to look for that one way to kind of synthesize it down into just a few words to help me, bite-sized pieces of it. For me, step 12 has always been very simply, go give it away. Just go. Once you've had your you've taken the 12 steps, you've had your spiritual awakening, your responsibility, my responsibility is to go give it away. Now, since I have kind of gotten to that, I also understand that this step is divided into multiple parts, right? This particular step. And so, and I'm sure that you're going to talk about that. But, I want to ask the question. I'm going to start off by asking a fairly simple question. When I asked you to be a part of Legacy Chat and to record an episode and be a guest for me, why did you say yes to this step?
Well, because you didn't give me many options, first of all. I think there was one other step and some traditions that were still on the slate. And that's funny, but honestly, if you had given me many options, this might have been the one I would have chosen.
Right.
11 or 12. I just believe it consummates everything. It all comes together, and uh, it's like the blossoming flower at the end of the plant. Everything we've done up until this point uh, kind of feeds this life of our new life in Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is kind of where I see it blooming. Not just in the past tense work or taken or worked the step like it's like I checked it off the list, but walking around in the world with the 12 step, which consummates the 11 other ones for me, in my understanding, and then this is just a step where it all comes together. I say all the time, I do some meetings in the corrections facilities, and and I give my sobriety date in there. Those guys are incarcerated, and here I am with my sobriety date. I sometimes don't even like doing that because I'm afraid that I know for me, when I was brand new, I would have better related to somebody that said they were 6 months sober, not somebody that said they were 30 plus years sober. So I kind of, but when I say that, I always try to also add that the reason I'm in that room is because I know if I don't give it away, I don't get to keep it. And I also know, because I've sat in AA long enough, watch enough people not do this, that they lose the flower, they lose that blossom, they lose that spark in their life that attracted me to Alcoholics Anonymous in the beginning. So, so I have to give it away in order to keep it, and then in order to grow it. So I probably can't be for sure. I know that I could, it's like we go to meetings and no matter what we read in our home group, we're reading a book, and every week this is everybody's favorite part of the book. I go, everybody's favorite step for me, my favorite step is the one we're talking about, and when we really dive into it and I think about how it's influenced me, they're all beautiful, they're all perfect, and they're all essential in my life. And so I can't say why I chose 12 other than it was limited options, but it might have been one of the ones I would have chosen had there been others too at the same time.
And this idea too. Oh, and I mean, let me stop for a second. In the interest of total honesty for our readers, Terry and I share a home group. I don't know if you said that at the beginning or not, but Terry and I are both in the same home group. We go to Get in the Car group, and it's a closed big book study on Friday nights in Grapevine, Texas. And but as you were talking, one of the things that I thought was this idea of the power behind step 12 is we hear all the time that the steps are in order for a reason, right? This step is where it is for a reason. And one of the first things that came to my mind when I thought that was that old saying that we heard 150 years ago, that you can't give away what you don't have. And so it would be, I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would be really difficult to go do step 12 if you haven't effectively done the first 11, right?
Well, I used to, the gentleman in my life used to say, the step is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps and try to carry the message to still practicing alcoholic. And, and and then the whole practice the principles in all our affairs. And he would rephrase that to say, no 12 steps, no spiritual awakening. No spiritual awakening, no message to carry.
Right.
No message to carry, shut your mouth. He would, honestly, he was old school and he would say that in a loving, caring way, but he really, he wouldn't call on new people in meetings. I don't agree with, I don't know that I agree with that, but I do agree with the idea that when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, we got posters. They put them in order. They even number them for us. And when I look at that, it's like I see a checklist. I don't see a checklist anymore. I visualize them in a circle or like a ball of yarn. They're all enmeshed with each other, and they all. But in the beginning, it was a checklist. You know what? That's okay. That's the way it had to be. But once I experience them, and this is what you were just saying, that's what me think of. I don't get the fruit of the action until I take it. I can learn all about it. We got a whole chapter about self-knowledge. They ain't gonna fix nothing.
That's right.
But once I experience the step, once I get out of my comfort zone, which is all about me, and I go make it about somebody else, I find purpose. I find purpose in my life, and I think that's what the 12th step is all about. Is it consummates all of the steps, not just purpose in helping the still suffering alcoholic, but purpose in my job, purpose in my community, purpose in my family, purpose in my marriage, purpose. I have purpose, and I think that all comes into fruition up to step 12. And then step 12 is where it kind of comes out.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I from time to time in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous hear people talking about how a specific step can help define for them what their purpose is. And I think that there is a conversation that has been going on in AA for years and years and years, and depends on who you talk to as to what the sentiment around it is. But nowhere in our literature that I have been able to find does it outline what we frequently hear as the 36 spiritual principles. 36, the spiritual principles underneath the 12 steps, the 12 underneath the traditions, and the 12 spiritual principles underneath the concepts for world service. But because I'm the guy that likes to, I'd rather watch a video than read a book. I know you're the exact opposite of that, but I need things dumbed down. I need things simplified. I have gravitated towards the idea that there are spiritual principles underneath each of the 12, all 36 of our principles in our in our 3 legacies. For step 12, trying to find one word that would, for me in my heart and my mind, define what step 12 is all about. It is about service. It is about getting out of myself and taking everything that I have learned from 1 through 11 through my experience of working with others and giving away this life-saving message. It just puts an exclamation mark on the idea that I must be of service. I must be willing to go out and give it away. Because when I first got to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I did not know that I was a selfish and self-centered individual, and that selfishness was the root of my problem, selfishness and self-centeredness. I know that today, and it still is part of my life today because I'm human. But before I got here, I didn't know that. And I didn't know that part of my happiness, my peace, and my joy would come from going out and giving it away, making opportunities for people to hear this message would be part of what would bring me joy, like this podcast, like when I'm sponsoring people, like when I get the opportunity to share in a meeting, share behind the podium at a meeting or at a conference, or whatever the service may be. The 12-step advance that you and I are going to be doing next August here in Dallas. All of these things are tools by which I get to be of service, but more than that, and the step reminds me of the importance of it. So how does the idea of, or how does everything I just said resonate with you, or not?
Well, I'm glad you prefaced what you just said with nowhere in there is it written that what the principles are for all 36, because I looked in it, I haven't found it either.
Right.
And I don't dispute people's, and I certainly would, if I added anything to step 12 being if it had to be uh, spiritual principle, that it being service. But I might add for that for me, and this is why I think it's important that I don't try to outline it for somebody else, because their experience, we just said that, we don't get to learn the steps, we experience them by taking the action. And their experience may be something different. Their experience, I could think of many. It could be one of empathy. It would be, for me, I think I mentioned purpose. Step 12 gives me the purpose of service. It's like, it's not even something that today that I really even think about having to go do. Okay. It's not like I punch in at work. Okay. I got to be there Monday to Friday. By God, whether I like it or not, I go,
Right.
I
Right.
do my time. I punch in, I do the best with what I got while I'm there, but I don't punch into AA.
Right.
It really has become ingrained in me in such a way that now that's the,
well, hold on.
I need to say I can punch out.
No doubt. I think what I'm hearing you say is it's the difference between having to do it and getting to do it.
Exactly. And I don't have to. I mean, I can certainly. I don't want to make anybody or imply to anybody that. I think it goes back to if I don't give it away, I can't keep it, and I know that. But it's not like I have to. It's not a chore. It's a joy. It's a privilege. It's a blessing. It's a gift. It's an opportunity. It's purpose of service. It's not. I don't look at it like, in the beginning. I probably did. I could tell a story about my first treatment center commitment, and it was a freaking job.
I was going to ask you to tell this. I was going to ask you to tell this because I've heard you share on this before. I was going to ask you to give the example of the children's hospital.
Oh, the children. That's a different one, but yeah, I had.
Because it was that this whole idea of having to do it versus getting to do it.
Right. Well, I don't even remember, a couple years sober, and I became sick. I didn't know why I was sick. I had like a blockage in my ear. Long story, kind of shorter, is doctor, and I ended up diagnosed with cancer. But I don't know, a couple years sober, I was diagnosed with cancer, and a gentleman very prominent in my life then and today. Nothing good in my life has ever been my idea. Let's just put that out there. Okay. It's not one of it has ever been my idea. It's always been somebody else's idea. But he said, in AA, what we do with our alcoholism is we try to help others. We get out of ourselves. He said, I don't know. I'm not no oncologist. I don't know how this thing works medically, but he said spiritually, what if we, and he always said we, he didn't say me. He said, what if we approach this like we do AA? What if we tried to be of service? And he said, I love kids. I've always loved kids. He said, why don't you go down there to that hospital in Fort Worth and see if there's something you could do down there on a volunteer basis? And I don't know. The Pope could probably told me to go do that. I wouldn't listen. My mother could have told me to do that, and I probably would listen. But this man, an Alcoholics Anonymous, who I respected, told me. And while I didn't, understand it, I did it anyway. And, I went down there, and it's a process. They just don't let you walk in the door and sit down with somebody else's kid in their building. So I went through the process, interviewed, background checks, all that, and I started volunteering at the hospital there, and on the oncology floor. I was still getting my own treatment. I had no hair. I'd go in there and play shoots and ladders. I can play that shoots and ladders with the best of it. I'm sitting there crisscross on the floor in the break in the game room playing with kids, and there was time when my selfishness would sneak in there and go, what the hell has this got to do with anything? What are you wasting? It's your day off, for crying out loud. I was off Monday, Tuesday, and I'd be down there Monday, Tuesday. When are you going to get a life? Has yourself ever told you that one? Because I get that one all the time. Myself is not dead. When you going to get a life? Not realizing, accepting the fact that this is a better life than I've ever had or ever could have wished or dreamed for. But then I would get up off that floor and I'd get on that elevator and it'd take you down to the atrium and I'd see all the little kids walking around with IV poles, and a sense of gratitude would overcome me. I don't generate that, Rick. I just am incapable of generating that. But the action of following that man's suggestion and doing it, even when I didn't really understand what the purpose of that was, I would get a sense of gratitude. And I am of early 30s. I don't know how old I was. I was in my early 30s and I was diagnosed with cancer. And it took away, at least momentarily, the sense of self-pity. Poor me, well, all that crap. It washed that away.
Right.
And you know what? Here, I ended up doing that. I ended up doing a summer counselor camp for kids with cancer for 16 years. And on top of that, my brother was in an accident. He was burned. I did a burn camp for kids for 12 of those 16 years. And as a result of that, from some guidance from my wife, because like I said, it's never my idea, I went back to school to be a teacher. And here I am 18 years as a classroom teacher. And all that kind of ball started rolling by that sponsor getting me out of myself in a spirit of step 12 to treat my cancer, not my alcoholism, but was it?
Right.
To treat my cancer in a spiritual sense of trying to do something for somebody else. And you know what? And this is true. This is true anything I do in AA as well with the still suffering alcoholic. It was a load of fun. It was a blast. I got more stories about those kids. And I would come back from summer camp with just stories. And it was not one more time, back to what I said earlier, it wasn't a chore.
Right.
It wasn't a chore. It was a blessing. It was something I couldn't generate for sure.
Wonderful. No doubt.
I don't know if that even answered the question. What the hell was the
no,
question?
it absolutely did. It absolutely did. Because, well, going back to the idea that for me, the spiritual principle of step 12 is service. I think what you did was you put an exclamation mark on the idea that it doesn't have to just be service in the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. How can I be of service to the world about me? Right. And we're taught that as a result of the principles that we learn in the fellowship. So you did that very, very well. One of the questions that I also like to ask on the steps whenever I get to visit with folks on the steps for an episode is knowing what step 12 is, knowing what the end game is and what the result is, what it's asking of us, what is on any given day or at any given time, what is your biggest obstacle with working this step?
I think I just kind of touched to that.
You did.
It always happens between my ears, and it tells me that What about me? Where's mine? I get that. Or, you know, I hope that our listeners understand that when we talk freely about ourselves, or I do anyway, I'm not trying to paint to me, a picture of AA that is not flawed is not a true picture of AA.
Absolutely. 100%.
So for me, the thought gets in there that tells me that I don't need to do this anymore, or that what about me and mine, or where am I getting out of this, or all of that selfish crap is still alive in my life. It's not gone away. It is greatly diminished, and I don't act on it nearly to the level I used to. But it's like my self will is still calling plays, and it keeps calling them. And it's up to me to play defense and just not let the play work. I got to blitz it or whatever. Uh, but it's always rooted in selfish and self-centeredness, and then that's the thing that tries to block me from taking the action. I love what Jimmy says. If I make a commitment, I have to make a decision. I'm committed to corrections meetings on Tuesday nights. It's just what I do. So I don't have to go Tuesday when the day's going through. Well, am I going to go down there tonight? Well, I don't know. I'd rather not. Or it's nope. It's not. I've got scheduled phone calls throughout the week, and I got people in my life. I watch them have speakers. They just happen. Now they just happen for me, but they don't always happen for the people that are supposed to be calling.
Right.
And there's something to learn about that for me, because I know when I'm sitting here taking time out of my day, because that's when selfish gets in there. Well, that so and so and so and so, here I am sitting here waiting on the phone ring, and they ain't doing their part, blah, blah. But you know what? The truth is, I am doing my part.
Right.
See, I'm not responsible for their gifts or their blessings. It's like that. It's like that. Alcoholism is the only disease that I know of that tells us when you got it. It's also the only one where my responsibility and my actions against my self-will, trying to line them along with God's will, is to where I get to have a part in the blessings in my life. If I don't do what I say I'm going to do, be a man of integrity and be available when I say I'm going to be available, I can't expect the returns. And so when I see that not done on the other end, I just have to go, well, man, I'm not like that today, or at least in that moment of that day. So I don't know. I guess the obstacles are my thinking. Always, it goes back to that. Obstacles are my thinking. It's like my thinking to now. I add to that, and that's selfish and self-centered thinking, because all my thinking is not bad. I have some very valid thoughts, thanks to a step 11 in my life. But I also got some step 3 thoughts in there, that jump up. And they're not dead. They have not died. They're still active in my life. And I sometimes act on them, and I pay, but thank God I got the rest of the tools and the steps to apply when that happens. But it's the thinking, like somebody I know says the drink happens way before the drink happens, and it starts with the think. The think happens before the drink happens. And that goes for somebody that's been sober for a long time, because I've seen people who've been sober a long time go back and drink, and I don't want to do that.
I don't either. I could not agree more. The drink happens a long time before I put that bottle in my mouth, no doubt. One of the things that I like to do with each episode is I like to read just a little snippet from the study off of Take the 12, whether it's a step, tradition, or concept. And since we're talking about step 12, I'm going to read a quick snippet from step 12 off of Take the 12. And I just want to see if it resonates with you, what your thoughts are. It says this: A experience has proven that nothing will ensure immunity from drinking as much as intensive work, not just work, but intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. You can help when no one else can. It was the basis of Bill's conversation with Dr. Silkworth shortly after his white light experience. One of Bill's first thoughts, and I absolutely love this kind of I've visualized this so many times in my head. One of Bill's first thoughts sitting on the bed after when Dr. Silkworth stuck his head in the door and went, and again, I'm paraphrasing, dude, something's different. Something's different. What's going on? One of the first thoughts that Bill had was that that other people suffering from this illness could benefit from an understanding of what a personality change can look like for them too. A spiritual experience can look like for them too. So it was that God led Bill to Dr. Bob, and what was to be a 15-minute first meeting turned into almost 6 hours. That whole idea of seconds and inches. I think that sometimes we forget the impact that we have and what our, it says in tradition 5 that our primary purpose is to carry the message to the still suffering alcoholic. But I think there are times, at least I can speak for myself, that I forget that. And I get all wrapped up in a whole bunch of other things that I think I need to be doing to help the still suffering alcoholic. And I forget that we're in the life-saving business. That is the business we're in, is we're in the business of saving lives. And when Bill sat down with Dr. Bob in that gatehouse, when Henrietta Seiberling hooked them up, and Dr. Bob didn't want to have nothing to do with this man. I'll give him 15 minutes. After they had the opportunity to share the language of the heart, that talk lasted almost 6 hours, and it changed their lives and certainly changed our lives as a result of it. This idea that intensive work with other alcoholics is vital to not only our success, but the success of the fellowship. Talk for me a moment about how all of that kind of resonates with you.
I think it's important, obviously, from what our conversation has gone so far. I think it is not just important, but necessary. And I love in Alcoholics Anonymous how there's something for everybody. And you and I have had the conversation because there's a lot of things that just are not my avenue of service. They're just not. They're not. And actually, this right here is me getting out of my comfort zone as far as
Yes, it is. Big time.
What I enjoy doing as far as I would say probably treatment, and their recently corrections work is more where I feel most comfortable in my step 12 service with the alcoholic. Now that's above, or however you want to do it, above or below, whatever.
Below the
sometimes
below,
in AA
below
it would be above, we'd say below. But if there was a hierarchy of my personal service, the service with sponsees would be probably first, most important for my recovery that way, because I get to share on an intimate level my personal experience with the steps. I am a sponsor that doesn't ever, I try to make it a real point to not ever tell anybody what they need to do.
Right.
But I never hesitate to tell them what I did.
Right.
I've screwed up too much to think I have anybody's right to tell anybody what to do.
Well, the other side of that is, and I tend to lean towards the exact same thing. I try not to tell my sponsees what to do, because for me, I mean, your point is valid, but I also think that another point for me is that the moment that I start trying to tell my sponsees what to do is that moment that I fall back into exactly what my sponsor says in step 5 is my problem. The exact nature of my wrongs is that I'm trying to play God. And I can't play God in my life, and I can't play God in your life. But like you said, I can share with you what I did. And then you can take it from there. I also want to highlight something else. You said something that made me think about something I think it's important we talk about here, that not service can be defined in a lot of different ways. As you know, I am actively involved in the general service structure, currently at this moment sitting in a position where I get the privilege of going to the General Service Conference this year and next to carry the conscience of my area and vote for what I believe is in the best interest of Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole. and I've done a lot of the service positions, or I've been elected to a lot of the service positions that got me to this point: GSR, DCMC, area secretary, area treasurer, area chair, alternate delegate, and now delegate. And when you and I first started working together, I kind of voluntold you that you needed to be the GSR for our home group, and you kind of kicked and screamed the whole, well, not getting into it, but what I think is incredibly important that we say here is that what I got to watch you do in your service to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous for that rotation was you took and placed a large importance on what Bill told us in the literature, contempt prior to investigation. And you did that position. You jumped into it. You may have bitched and screamed and hollered the whole way, or a lot of the way, but you threw yourself into it. And you asked questions, and you showed up, and you went to every single district meeting and area assembly, and you did the things that were required of that position. And when the rotation was done, I remember you and I sitting down and talking, and you saying, I'm glad that's over, and I don't think that this is for me. And I remember feeling in that moment that absolutely, this is not for you. If this is what you feel after 2 years of doing it and it's not right, then go do something else. Find something else where you can be of service. But no one will ever be able to say that Terry C. did not give it the old college try. And you did it, and you threw yourself into it, and I respect you for that. But service can be defined in a lot of different ways. It can be defined in you always talk about, I'm the guy that would rather, as you said earlier, work with sponsees or go to treatment or corrections, but you're also the guy that likes to take out the trash and sweep the floors at the home group. I've seen you do it way too many times. And all of those pieces of service are valuable. And
that's the thing that's the actions that hooked me into Alcoholics Anonymous. Was the ones that anybody could do.
Right.
Was, washing ashtrays was my favorite story, but taking out the trash, going up there where nobody's there and cleaning the group. When I first got sober, I was a storefront group. And, I did group positions. So I had a key, to just, things like go up there and clean the damn toilet, go up there and when nobody's looking, because I didn't think of that one more time. I don't think of that. Okay. But somebody in my life said, why don't you go up there? I was feel all sorry for myself. And here was the direction I get: valid direction, Alcoholics Anonymous. When I'm all wrapped up in me, right. Because it says, you read a snippet, but it says also, when all else fails, intensive work with another alcoholic will save the day. So when I get to that place, he said, here's the direction I got. He didn't tell me to go 12 steps somebody. He said me to go clean the toilet. Mm-hmm. Well, now wait a minute. What the hell has that got to do? Where's that? What page is that on?
Right.
See, that's where my brain can go. But you know what? Because one more time, somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous that I respected told me to do it. I went and did it. And you know what I did? I stepped back. I went, that's the nicest looking damn toilet I ever seen in my life. I felt good about that action. And that's the bottom line in service for me, is, does it change the way I feel? And I don't go into it for that. I'm not looking for that. It's just that seems to be the end result. If the service is right, it changes the way I feel in my own skin. There's a section in our book. It talks about that in many places, but they're also in the sex inventory. If this is causing you a lot of problem, what they tell me to do, not what I want to hear when it's causing me a lot of problem. Tell me to go throw myself into helping others.
Throw ourselves harder into working with others.
Exactly.
Right.
And if it can overcome that urge, which is right below eating, in case you didn't know, I learned that somewhere along the line, as far as natural instincts, drives into human nature, it falls right under eating, which is pretty strong. Right. And if it can overcome that, then I think there's something to be said about the power of trying to be of service. Everybody has to find their own niche. I've known people in AA over the years to where Their niche didn't have anything to do with, I don't even like to say the word title. I just don't know another word for it. But there were no acronyms after them. They were just alcoholics, and their service was just to clean the group or to be the shopper or to be the, and you know what? Those are the jobs I think that most, I believe, my experience has been most influence that person walking in with a shiny desire chip in their pocket. Right. I didn't know DCM from crap. I didn't know what none of that meant, did not care. But I knew that that guy was always there early and he always had the coffee made.
Right.
He was always telling me to come back. You know, and in the beginning, now what I know since then is all those other positions make his job possible.
Exactly.
They're all important, none more than others. And I think that's the beauty of Service and Alcoholics Anonymous. The fear for me is because I know my ego is not dead. I keep saying it. Selfish and self-centered is alive in my life. And if I am not on my game, on my spiritual game through the practice of these steps in my life, it will get in there and tell me that what I'm doing is more important than what you're doing, or what you're doing is less important, or I'll judge what you're doing, or I'll say, well, he's doing it for whatever reason, and none of that is none of my business.
That's right.
What am I doing? And is it changing the way I feel in such a way that I'm happy and joyous and free and of service to God and the kids, his kids about me? That's a litmus test for me. And it might just be making coffee. It might be standing up at the mic at the conference. It might be me writing an agenda item. It might be any number of 1,000 things. But I'll always know if it's right for me if it changes the way I feel in a wholesome, spiritual way, such that I am a better place to be of service to God and his kids about me.
That's right. That's right. One of the things, so you've been sober 33 years?
Yeah.
33 years. I've been sober 36 years. We've both been around about the same amount of time. I remember when I first came in, there were a lot of things said in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous that I don't hear said today. I don't know if that's as a result of they just had a shelf life, or if they whatever. But there are a lot of things that I hear today in meetings that I can't find anywhere in our literature. And, you know, Bill Wilson has been quoted as saying that our chief responsibility to the newcomer is to provide a clear and adequate presentation of our program. And I hear things in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I can't justify, or I can't rectify in anywhere in our literature. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I believe that there are a lot of untruths, we'll call them myths, that we hear in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous today around step 12, around this idea of practicing these principles in all our affairs, or carrying the message, going out and giving it away, or even having the first part of step 12 of as a result of having had a spiritual awakening. Are there any myths that you have heard of that just don't seem right to you, or you can't justify in our literature around step 12?
I don't know if it's a myth. I think that sometimes the old timers, we limit, or we allow people to limit the scope of step 12. You know, if you ask most people in Alcoholics Anonymous, well, where chapter do you get direction from step 12? What are they going to say? They're going to say working with others. Because that's where we go. That's where it's almost like that's become the chapter. That is not the chapter. There's a chapter to the wives. There's a chapter to the employers. There's a chapter to the family afterward. There's a vision for you. And the way I read and study those chapters is that are the directions for in all my affairs.
Right.
Those are as much a part of step 12 as me sitting down with a sponsee or a new person, or sharing in a corrections or treatment center, or talking to somebody on the back patio that's just got a desire chip. I'm working with a gentleman lately who has come back in and is going through some times like we do. You know, that's just what we do. Divorce, lost jobs, you know, what just feel that's how we are. It's just what us folks generate. And
Sure.
through his drinking, he is that some of that's happened, and he's going through that now, and he's trying to be sober. Well, you go to a lot of meetings, you do a lot of reading, you do a lot of praying, you reach out to other people. I'm not available all the time. You got to learn to call other people. So these are the directions I'm giving him that were given to me. Okay, I'm sharing my experience with him. On top of that, he had a problem. Well, I can't go to the meeting tonight because I got my kids this weekend. I'm thinking about trying to get my mom to watch them. I was like, no, 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 time out. This is in all your affairs. I said,
Right.
you take your kids to the movie like you told them you were going to take them to the movie.
Right.
You went to a meeting, you called somebody today, you read some of the literature. Now go be with your kids. And that was not what he was expecting to hear. Now, I don't know, because that's not what he had heard from somebody else in his other efforts, but I was like, man, these are the things we've got to learn to do sober. They're your responsibilities. And I think step 12, not just in that one chapter that we all seem to think is the step 12 chapter, a lot of people in AA, that would be the myth that I would, if I had to pick one, I would say that would probably be it.
And the beautiful
You're
part about that is the next question that I was going to ask, you just answered it really, because the next question I was going to ask was, when working with a sponsee on this step, is there one specific thing that you always want them to know about it? And I love how you took and used the example of 2 wives and 2 employers, and the family afterward are really, really great examples of what it looks like to practice these principles in all our affairs. In the same way, I was sitting in our home group's monthly tradition study this month on Tradition 11, and Ed C was talking about the parallel of Tradition 11. You know, we always think about Tradition 11 being at the level of press anonymity, at the level of press, radio, and films, but this idea of attraction versus promotion, the perfect connection to that is through the work that we're doing in CPC and PI, right? And how are we allowing those in our communities to understand that our job is to talk about what AA is, what it isn't, what alcoholism is, what it isn't, and then through our own lives be that attracting force for people when they come and want to stay. So I love how you tied practicing these principles in all our affairs back to other pieces of literature, because it would be really easy to just say, all I got to do is sponsor people, for instance.
We've had this discussion before. I'm not one that really buys feelings aren't facts. That you hear that, to me, that's BB, that's not AA, and I'm not disputing it. I realize that feelings aren't facts. I guarantee you them sun guns are real when they're mine. By
That's
God,
right.
they're real, they're
That's
factual,
right.
and those are the things that I will drink at. And when
That's
we
right.
get in these other areas of our life, all our affairs, jobs, what do we say when people come to meetings and they're in the problem? They're talking about their job, they're talking about their wife or husband, they're talking about their kids, they're talking about their neighbor, they're talking about the lady in the grocery store line. Other people are involved in those areas of all of our affairs, and I really feel like that part of step 12 is, how do I learn to deal with that? Because if I don't, I'm going to get in such a way that where those non-real feelings, those emotions overcome me. And that's the stuff I drank at, Rick. That's the stuff I drank. I didn't drink it the truth. Who the hell drinks it the truth? But by God, it's real. And so, it's like this gentleman. I'm like, man, you need to go be with your kids, because he's going to, if you don't, and our book talks about that in Family Afterward. The father may throw himself more into AA, and then the family's going to feel neglected. So I kind of believe that it's our part. Yes, I have to be involved heavily, and I am. You mentioned earlier, my wife's in AA, and she's heavily involved. And between the two of us, sometimes we just like pass each other.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone in one room, she's on the phone in the other room. And sometimes I wonder, man, well, what the heck? What about us? Well, here's the real truth. If we aren't on the phone in that room and I'm on the phone in this room, there's a real good chance there ain't gonna be no us.
That's right.
So, it's a work of finding that balance, making sure you have time for the people in your life. That's all our affairs. And in this particular situation, in that present moment of that day, those other people were his kids.
Right.
And you know what? I'm sorry, but those kids are more important than somebody sitting in an AA meeting. I'm sorry. The person in an AA meeting is important in his life so that he can be important in his kids' lives. AA teaches us how to do that. So
Once
we have
again,
to have both. But I
you,
think that the myth would be that the 12th step is just working with others.
yeah.
That so limits it. It's so much bigger than that.
Mm.
You got a little bitty flower. I made the analogy in the beginning that the 12th step is where the plant blooms. Uh, if we just limit it to that, our flower is not, we don't have a bouquet, let's say.
Right.
Whereas if we really practice these principles in all of our affairs, I believe we get something much prettier, much bigger. It's bigger.
It is bigger.
And there's more. We like more. We have more people. So don't cheat yourself of the more. Go out there and get it, man. Try to practice these things in your job. When I go to work, how can I be? I'm a school teacher. How can I be of better service to these kids today?
That's right.
And sometimes when they're on my last nerve, I have to say prayer over and over and over because I don't see God in them in the moment. I just don't. But by God, if I pray and I try to get out of what I am seeing, which is through my human eyes, and the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous allows me to see God in them little babies.
The last question that I want to put out to you, I asked, it's not specific to step 12, but it is a question that, or it is a question that I always like to hear experience, strength, and hope on. Inventory is a big word to some people, and it's very scary to some people, but I'm a firm believer that taking inventory on a regular basis is absolutely vital to the maintenance of my spiritual condition. What does inventory look like in your life today?
Inventory in my life today is that paragraph in step 10. And it's the walking around 4 through 9 in my life today. Directions for step 10 are one paragraph. It's just one, y'all. It ain't a whole bunch. It's one paragraph. He keeps it simple. We're the ones that don't. Bill kept it real simple. So inventory for me means watching out and looking for I'm selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, pride. And the only way I can do that is by being in tune to how I'm reacting, how I'm acting around God's kids. And maybe it's just practice, but I always know when I'm not. Because how do I know? I'm simply uncomfortable in my own skin.
Right.
I feel just a twinge of that thing that I used to be enmeshed with. I'm talking about when I didn't know the only relief I knew was a drink or a drug. It was just, I described it to somebody this week and I never have done this. It's like my insides itched. They itched and I couldn't reach them to scratch, but I knew a drink would stop the itch for a little while. I can get close to that, just enmeshed with that uncomfortable itching is not a comfortable feeling. I can get enough of that into my life to where that becomes an option. But that doesn't happen for me. I can't tell you the last time it's happened, but just a little bit of that nowadays. And I go, with practice, AA has taught me to be aware. I can see it. I see it happen. And also with practice, I never learned anything by doing something right. I have to screw it up. And over 32 years, 33 years of screwing stuff up, I not only see it happening while it's happening, but I have some sense of experience of how to stop it and change it. So that's inventory for me. Wonderful. It's now sometimes that happens on Wednesdays at 4:30 when I have to sit down with Rick W in his apartment because we do that every week. Wednesdays with Maury, there's Wednesdays with Rick, because 30 plus years sober, it ain't like I don't need that, and people need to know that I have to have that. Now sometimes we just talk about football.
That's right.
But the reason that's important is because when it's time to where I need to talk about something more than football, I know I can go to Rick W. to talk about it.
That's right.
So it's that consistent, and that's inventory. It's that consistency, constant, every day, not ever thinking that I don't need it or it's not important or it's there every day. It's like Charlie and Joe said, it's walking around steps, man, 4 through 9. Walking around in the world out there. That's inventory for me. It's not when I sat down 30 plus years ago with that legal pad I talk about when I share the steps and I wrote that stuff. That's not it. That's not inventory for me today.
Right.
It's where it started. It was my first experience with learning how it works, but that's not what it is for me today. It's in the moment.
Love it.
I guess it would be the first thought that came to my mind. It's one more time. I said it a minute ago about something else. I don't remember what it was, but it's important. It's important. I have to do it.
Yeah.
If I want to stay happy, joyous, and free, I can
that's the
choose not
key.
to.
And that's the key right there, because we all know that every single promise that we have in our fellowship is conditional. If I do this, I will get this. And if
that's a big old word, ain't it?
Pardon me?
That's a big old word. If.
Yeah, ain't it the truth.
It
Terry,
really is.
we are just about out of time. Is there anything that you would like to offer as a closing comment on step 12? Anything that you want our listeners to remember as they begin to put the spiritual principles into practical application in their lives today?
I don't know. I think that we both shared it through our experience that don't limit it. Yes, it's absolutely carrying the message to the still suffering alcoholic, but don't limit the influence that AA can have in your family, can have in your job, can have in your community, can have in you if you choose to be a member of a church organization, can have in that. Step 12 is where I hear people say, and I agree, what I want to do is be the best example of the big book that I could be. Well, how do I do that? Practice step 12. Practically practice step 12 in my life. I have to tell them what I'm doing. It shouldn't be necessary. It should just show. And if I'm doing it to the best of my ability, it will show. It may not show in that moment right then, but I believe it will show. And you'll find, my experience has been that I will find purpose. And if you don't have purpose in your life and you don't feel that purpose and it's still a chore, then maybe reach out to somebody that you know that has that purpose and ask them how they came about that. And I'll tell you what, if you ask me what I would say, I'd say, well, you know what you got to do? You got to keep trying. It's like I heard a guy in a meeting say one time, he said, my prayers don't work. And an old timer chalked up and said, we ain't doing it right. And what do you mean I ain't doing it right? He said, you ain't doing enough of it. And if your service ain't working and it's not giving you a purpose in your life, then you ain't doing it right. You ain't doing enough of it. So find some more. And that may need to be in all your affairs. Maybe that means tomorrow when you go to Thanksgiving dinner, you don't get an argument with that family member that you disagree with about whatever, something happened 40 years ago. I'm just speaking about it in my family. Nobody in the listeners probably have that. But there's a future example of something I'm being prayerful about, of how I can practice the 12th step in my life, all my affairs.
Right.
Tomorrow, Thanksgiving. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for you, Rick W. And even though this is not something I wanted to do, I don't even like it. One more time, it's proof that what I like doesn't matter because it's good for me. Because now that it's almost over, I'm grateful.
That's right.
On Thanksgiving Eve.
Terry, thank you so very much for your time and for your service. And I can assure you that for those people who get to walk this journey in Alcoholics Anonymous with you, and I'm one of them, I'm confident that our listeners are going to be able to take away a lot from your sharing. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Rick W. I love you, man.
I love you too. So
Happy
just
to you and everybody else.
Just a reminder to everyone that you can go to takethe12.org to learn more about all 3 of our legacies in AA through step tradition, and concept studies, blog posts, videos, books, and so much more. So until next time, let us not forget Bill W.'s words when he said this, quote, "We clearly see AA in three dimensions: the dimension of recovery, the dimension of unity, and the dimension of service. Without any of these, AA couldn't function." God bless.